I now present to you The Mary Jane Show with special guest Robert William Abrevaya discussing the world famous comedy store 50th anniversary. Take it away. I now present to you The Mary Jane Show. And if you didn't know, this week the Comedy Store had a big anniversary. It is the 50th anniversary of the world famous Comedy Store. So I thought the best thing we could do is to have The Mary Jane Show do an interview with the legendary, the wonderful, the brilliant Robert William Abrevaya on the last 50 years of the world famous Comedy Store. So, without further ado, we will be starting the interview of Robert William Abrevaya. Welcome, Robert William Abrevaya. How are you today?
Hi, Mary Jane. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Wonderful. I have my first question when you're ready.
What's the first question?
Robert William Abrevaya, where exactly were you April 7th, 1972?
I presume I can't say definitely for 100% positive. I was at Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut, the day that the Comedy Store began.
Wonderful. Bravo, bravo. Robert William Abrevaya, what type of law were you interested in pursuing when you made your decision to go to law school?
Well, I end up sort of concentrating on and being most interested in constitutional law and in thought crimes and the Constitution, which was awarded third place honorable mention in the Beverly Hills Bar Association's 1977-1978 IH Prinze Medal competition. In thought crimes and the Constitution, I argued that the laws which criminalize marijuana use abridge freedom of thought, make such use a thought crime, and therefore are and should be judicially declared to be unconstitutional. So I was very interested in constitutional law, and also I was interested in entertainment and mass communications, as it was referred to, law at the time. And I found myself drawn to the Comedy Store and other such venues, and the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson and Match Game at CBS, and the LA area had so many opportunities. I was just so pleased to be able to take advantage of them, and one of them is performing live at the world famous Comedy Store.
Bravo, bravo. Robert William Abrevaya, can you describe your first time ever at the world famous Comedy Store?
Okay, now to answer that, wow, there's a situation again. It's a raised, not at that distance, but a raised branch, which, if in proximity, could do damage, but nonetheless. So I'm going to. I'm being observed by a hostile entity at the moment.
Oh no! Would you like me to repeat the question, Robert?
No, I would like to not be observed by a hostile entity when I'm trying to do something worthwhile, and he's going to stand here until I find it even.
Does he appear to be moving or leaving?
No. He's very intentional. Can I try to see if I can walk around with the
Certainly.
Maybe, can you still see me?
Yes.
Okay.
I will rephrase the question. Can you describe your first time at the world famous Comedy Store?
I need to get through the gate here and then get to a safer place. So please excuse me. Okay, Mary Jane, this is not ideal, but I'm going to attempt to do this in this environment. Can you see me?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay, let's try to do this, please.
What
was the
was,
question?
Robert William Abrevaya, what was your first time at the world famous Comedy Store?
Oh, okay. To answer that complete, I made my Hollywood stand-up comedy debut at 8433 Sunset Boulevard. At the time, it was the Funny Farm. It had been the Comedy Store. It was the Comedy Store again subsequently, if you will, the Once and Future Comedy Store. So I made my stand-up comedy debut in what is now the original room of the Comedy Store, but at the time it was the Funny Farm, and it was a very positive experience, which I've now posted the audio and me lip syncing all these years later, but I had preserved the audio and I've got it on YouTube, and and everything went well, I would say. It was a total of approximately 10 minutes. And then maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes after I got off stage, John Mayall, who would, going back to California, so many good things around. Don't want to leave California. Something to never go down. Anyway, he was in the audience when I made my stand-up comedy debut, and I was already a fan. I was just singing from California from the Turning Point in 1970, and in fact, I just listened to it in recent, last night this morning. And then anyway, I listened to it often, uh, and so my prepared material went, I think, well, but also, there was this very pleasant surprise that at my stand-up comedy debut, here was someone who I was already a fan of, who I had paid money to buy his album, and there he was, right there in the original, well, in now the right there in the room there, and so I improvised, I said, I don't know if John Mayall was in the room earlier. I don't know if he's still here, but I remember being back east, listening to California, going back to California, so many good things. Anyway, so I sort of semi sang. Not this. I was fully singing out, fully all out singing just now, but with I was not anticipating it, and so I sort of semi-sang the beginning lyrics to California. But I think he appreciated it, and I think he enjoyed my act. In fact, and so with 2, 3, 4 minutes after I got off stage, John Mayall went on stage. I was sort of the opening act for John Mayall, and then afterwards, after the show closed, he invited us to his house in the, I don't know, the hill. I anyway, it was a nice place, and for a party, and he well, anyway, so it was a very pleasant memory. But my Comedy Store debut was at the Westwood Comedy Store in well, my my debut at the Funny Farm was January 15th. It was 15th. It was after midnight, so I think it was the 15th, but it might have been the 16th. I gotta check the numbers. Anyway, of 77, and then I think it was April. I don't have the exact date in my head of 77. I made my stand-up comedy debut at the world famous Comedy Store at the Westwood Comedy Store, and in fact. well, I don't want to say too much at this time, but anyway, Bob brought me on, and I didn't get
Bob
ten
who?
Bob Aguayo. Oh, I don't know if you know Bob, but you may have heard the name Robert Aguayo, Bob Aguayo. He was at the 50th, and at the time he was the MC, and I remember subsequently at the Sunset Boulevard Comedy Store, like during potluck nights, he brought me up more than once. But he was like one of the main. He was the main MC for potluck, or one of the main. I think he was, at least for a period of time, he was the primary MC for potluck nights. And anyway, AGUAYO, he was at the 50th, and I didn't interact with him, or if I did, I didn't recognize, but I saw people posting pictures of, and he wrote something, and he apparently, I don't know if he's still performing, but he's still around.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert. Question. What was the first time you stepped foot ever inside of the world famous Comedy Store? And did you see any famous comedians you might have recognized?
Before I answer, I wanted to add, and Michael Becker on piano I'm pretty sure at the Westwood Comedy Store was the piano player. I'm almost positive. Good. Oh, I'm sorry. And then your question now was, please restate. I wanted to mention Michael, but please say your question again.
When and how? Robert William Abrevaya, what was the first time you ever stepped foot inside the Comedy Store? And did you see any comedians that you recognized?
I to the best of my recollection, the first time that we went there, my significant other, quote unquote, and I at the time, uh, this was late '74, possibly early '75, but I think late '74. We saw Jimmy Walker, who was a big star at the time. Good Times was a hit comedy, Norman Lear comedy sitcom on CBS, and so we saw him, and then I think it was early '75, but it was either late '74 or early '75. We saw Cheech and Chong in the main room, and we had briefly met Cheech and Chong back east in Rhode Island, and we didn't meet with them again this time after the show, but it was nice to at least see them perform. And late '74 and or early '75, it was. I had it gave me a generally positive impression of the Comedy Store from the beginning, and then uh, there I at a certain point they had uh, comedians upstairs in the belly room, and it was a good deal. All you had to do is buy one drink, and I would buy a coffee. I think yeah, I could get a coffee for $2, and I would leave a 25-cent tip. That's not extravagant, but it's anyway. But it seemed to be okay, and you could see a very enjoyable 2.5, maybe 3 hour show of some of the best female comedians performing live
Like who?
um now I don't know if you there was what when uh oh wow, I'm one reason I wanted more recovery time is that the
That's okay,
my
Robert. I can
I'm
move on
sorry,
to another
I'm
question.
the female comedian I remember the most at the Funny Farm, who I was also at the Comedy Store some, was Mick Hen, MC capital HEN, and I if she's still performing, I'm not aware of it. I don't know if she's still around, but that's the comedian. I remember seeing her in the belly room, and she would do a thing with smoking, like you, Mary Jane. And that reminds me now. She did a thing about smoking tobacco cigarettes as part of her act, and And when John Mayall invited us after my stand-up comedy debut to his place, McKen also was one of the ones who showed up. And uh, I noticed that John disappeared fairly soon, and McKen disappeared fairly soon. I wonder if that was a coincidence, but I'm just I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Yeah, anyway, but was pleased. Anyway, and oh yeah, I'm just it's the kind of thing. Okay, I switched hands from my left hand to the right hand. It's the kind of thing where I'm going to see if I can safely sit down again. I don't know if that's possible, but I think it's the kind of thing where I might, if I wasn't if I was just sitting down looking at the camera, I might be able to get it right, but I can picture her face and I'm not able to pull up her name and it's annoying me. Um, uh, Diane Nichols, Joanne Deering, oh, there, Karen Babbitt, uh, the, uh, the, but the lady that I'm overlooks me. I'll try. Okay, I'm going to try to sit down again. But the lady that I'm uh, okay, yeah, it is
Is it safe, Robert? Can you turn it
yeah,
sideways?
yes, for the moment, yeah, okay. Let me. Can you? Is it is?
That is
Can,
perfect.
okay, good. Okay, good.
Robert William Abrevaya, what was the first time you met Mitzi Shore?
Oh, I think it's possible. Like I mentioned, I went. I would uh, go to the belly room, and there was sort of an informal policy at the time that if you were a paid customer for one room and there was room in the other room, you could. Well, I don't know. It wasn't a formal policy, but in any case, I could sometimes see shows in other rooms, and it seemed to be okay with them. And they like having warm bodies in the room, right? Especially if they're a good audience, and I was a good audience, and so and I remember I was just I posted something on. Excuse me, it's a little cool. I posted something on Joe Rogan's website recently. I was he was he posted a video. It wasn't a whole show, but you may know the name John Witherspoon. He was like the MC in the OR at the time, like around 75 or 76, and I played him one on one once. There's a basketball court south of Santa Monica Boulevard in Eastern Fairfax, about 2 miles from the Comedy Store, and I used to play there often. And John also did. In fact, and at least once I played him one on one, but I played a variation of one on one that I had invented back east at Lakeland High School in Shrub New York, called that I since I invented it, I named it Righty Lefty. Jim Cullen was the captain of the Lakeland High School basketball team, the 67-68 season, and he was a senior and I was a junior, but I was a better player than he was, and so I was starting and he was not. But he was still nominally the captain. I was, as the point guard, I was the on the floor, in effect, on the floor captain. But in any case, but I thought it was a good exercise for me to develop my skills to play one on one. But I wanted to encourage him to play me, and uh, if I played him, just straight out 10 games, I would beat him 10 times out of 10. My intention was not to make him feel bad or anything. So it occurred to me that if we could play righty lefty, or Jim was left-handed, so the rule was Jim left-handed was only allowed to shoot with his right hand, and I right hand was only allowed to shoot with my left hand. So we could compete with each other and develop our skills, but it was not a full out competition where he felt like he was looking bad. It was just my left hand against his right hand, in effect, but it's still, it's good to a way to develop my left hand shooting skills and skills. Anyway, similarly, John Witherspoon was left-handed. We played at least one one-on-one game, righty lefty, and at least once at the world famous Comedy Store, he allowed me to stand in the back of the OR, in the back of the original room, to perceive Jimmy J.J. Walker, who was, as I said, a big star at the time, with Good Times, and yeah. So I had seen Jimmy Walker perform. I'd say, well, including standing out in the hall and seeing catching little pieces and stuff, and if not actually in the room, but I had seen him perform before. Actually, paid money in late '74, early '75 to see him. But oh, I'm sorry. Did you ask when was the first time I met Mitzi Shore?
Yes, that was the question, Robert. I am
I'm sorry.
enjoying your.
I don't know. I went off on a tangent, and I thought it was related, so I thought it was okay. But well, yeah. Oh, so I may have met her in the halls, enough to say hi or something like that. I'm not. I don't. I'm not saying it didn't happen, and I'm sure we perceived each other. I mean, I knew who she was, and if I was there a number of nights at that time she was there almost every night. She was a hands-on. She wasn't just the owner at a distance. She was there, and making decisions about who performs and stuff like that. So I think it was the kind of thing where she knew who I was, but the only time, my first specific recollection of actually meeting her, is I was on I waited online on Potluck to go on, and then I did my approximately 3 minutes, and then you go over, and Mitzi's actually in the room. Do you know Mitzi's chair at the back of the OR at the top of the stairs there? That's Mitzi's
Yes.
chair. That's where she would almost always chair. Occasionally, I would see her there. She would sit in the cushions near the box office entrance. But when she was running the show, talent coordinator and everything else, she was almost always right there at in Mitzi's chair. And yeah, so after I get off stage, I go over there, and you stop, and you get your you get did I pass? And she said, uh, 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 I didn't pass. I should wait 6 months, and then I could try again. That was the rule. If you didn't pass the first time, yeah, I think that wasn't just me. I think that was the general rule. If you didn't pass the first time, you had to wait 6 months, because there was such a high demand. I was probably like one out of 20 or 25 or 30, whatever it was. I remember, I had a decent time slot. If Mitzi was still in the room, then it was still a good slot. So, but she didn't pass me the first time, and so I met her. It was she wasn't unpleasant. It was just she did her decision was to not pass me, and the only thing I recall from it is that I would have to wait 6 months before I could perform there again.
Did she give you, Robert William Abrevaya, did Mitzi Shore give you any constructive criticism?
You know, I don't specifically recall any at that time or subsequently, but to sort of a corollary of that, I do think that she paid me a great compliment once.
What was
She
that?
said, well, we were. She was sort of giving us a tour through someone. A little birdie, as it were, told me that Mitzi was going to give a tour, and I was only of like 5 or 10 people, 10 at the most. And she was going, and I remember specifically she had, there was a picture of Roseanne Barr, and she referred to her as this girl, and I don't know, Roseanne, she had great success, but Mitzi was part of her success. Anyway, uh, and she said uh, at a certain point when it was, I don't know if it was just her and me, or but if it was just her and me and a few, you'd think people would. It was like, at basketball camp, Jerry West was giving personal instruction. I was one of like less than, I think, less than 10 people again who get, you anyone 150 could have signed up for anyway. Yeah, so she said, why don't I get to it? She said, you have great patience. This is this was already like I think it was like late '80s, maybe '90 or early '90s, but I think like late '80s already, and yeah, I had been on The Funniest Person in America on Showtime, but I had not and the Robert William Abrevaya show premiered in 1986, but I hadn't had a lot of commercial success, let's say.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert. Robert William Abrevaya. Orson Bean question mark.
Oh yes, thank you for asking. Uh, I haven't seen. I'm looking forward to seeing the whole show that you produce, and thank you very much, Mary Jane Green, for producing this 50th anniversary special. But I thought you were wise to have that picture of. Would it be accurate to describe it as the green room of the belly room, where you took that picture where it had the green leaf wallpaper?
Yes, that was an intro promo.
Yeah, but like in the main room, there's a place between the bathroom and you're going onto the stage. It's sort of a green room there. But
Yes.
also, would it be accurate to state that room that you and I were in was the green room of the belly room? Would that be a fair description, an accurate description?
Yes.
Okay, okay, yeah. Oh well, it reminded me, uh, belly room, and I've already mentioned the belly room, uh, and yeah, I'm recalling a Holocaust memorial, but she survived. Anyway, oh, I'm sorry. Please restate the question, please.
Orson Bean
Oh yeah.
question
Oh yes.
mark.
Yes. So Orson Bean was being interviewed by Dennis Miller. Dennis Miller was on Weekend Update. He was one of the anchors on Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live for a number of years, and uh, he he had a radio show. I think he had at one point he had more than 200 affiliates or something, and he was on for a number of years. And I spoke with him more than once on the air, and speaking in favor of the legalization of marijuana. And I don't think he disagreed really. My In any case, uh, I, I had tapes. I had. And they quote disappeared when they in the dislocation of 2013. But I'm continuing to try to transcend the conspiracy or conspiracies. Oh my um oh, Orson Bean. Yes, so Dennis was interviewing Orson Bean, and Orson was, he had been on the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson many times, and he was always and he was on Merv Griffin and stuff. And he's always a good guest. He had a good sense of humor, and he had lots of showbiz stories. He's a very pleasant guy, and so now he told this story, and my impression is it's either literally true or at least based on a true story, maybe embellished it some for the telling's sake. But he was like he is a young comedian. I'm not positive about this detail. He may have been at Harvard. He may have been in Hasty Pudding. Conan O'Brien may have had some background like that. I'm not positive about that detail. But anyway, he was a young comedian in New York City, and he was trying to get himself a job. He didn't have an agent. He was like, in effect, I guess, knocking on doors. And the owner or the talent coordinator, or whatever, owner of one of the clubs or something, said, told him to say something funny. And Orson Bean said, Orson Bean, by the way, is not his given name, but and Orson said, so the guy, so the owner says, say something funny, and Orson said, belly button. And I thought, and I thought, and I remember I thought, oh, that is sort of funny on a visceral level, and it's just tickling and stuff like that. And anyway, so belly room brought to mind. He said he and apparently the owner liked it because he got the gig. He got the gig. He got the job. That's what the moral of the story is. It was funny enough to the owner. He liked it. He got the gig. Now I don't know if that's literal truth or based on a true story, but says the owner said say something funny. He said belly button and got the gig.
Bravo, bravo. Thank you, Robert William Abrevaya. Robert William Abrevaya, how was the Comedy Store different than other venues then?
Well, it has to do with the individuals present, um, and also it has to do, I think, at least to some degree, with the venue itself, the structure of there's 139 people or whatever in the OR, but the main room can seat 365 or whatever the number is, and then the belly room is more intimate. It's 99 or less. I don't know exactly the number, but it I think that's what was the precise question? Where
Well, how was the Comedy Store different than other comedy venues back in the 70s?
Well, one way the Comedy Store is back different is that they permitted me to perform there. I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, Mary Jane, but after I refused to sell my soul to the Los Angeles Municipal Court in '81, and they uh, and the LA County cover, covered it up. Uh, I'm sorry. I was going off on a tangent. What? Please, would you restate your question? I'm sorry.
I have a better question. Robert William Abrevaya, did any comedians influence you, and who is your favorite comedian?
You know, um I when I got I when I received some versions of this question in the past, uh, uh, I would generally respond that I thought the best was Robin Williams. However, may I please say something in just a moment that I would like to update that response.
Okay.
I think Robin was a great performer. But if I may please say, I would like to congratulate Argus Hamilton. He he may some people may think that he looks younger than me, but in fact he's actually been at the Comedy Store longer than I've been, and he's still going strong. In my opinion, Argus is one of the all-time greats. How many people can say, even figuratively, that Bob Hope was their opening act on the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson? I think this was 80. This was like January '81 or something like that. Argus was the featured comedian, but earlier on the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson was Bob Hope. And in fact, I think that's the show that he mentioned. He said as he was leaving, he said something like, "You ever try marijuana?" And he said, "You should. You should." He actually mentioned marijuana. I think it was on this. Anyway, so yeah. So congratulations to Argus. Sometimes people they wait till after they're no longer performing or whatever, and they say, oh, he was great. Argus is still doing it, and he's publishing, and so congratulations to him. I think he's one of the all-time greats, and he's still performing at the Comedy Store.
Bravo, bravo. Thank you, Robert. Robert William Abrevaya, if you were asked to define the history of the Comedy Store for the last 50 years, how would you describe its importance? Question mark.
And Mary Jane, I don't claim to have definitive knowledge of this. I know there's a place in England called the Comedy Store or something like that, and there's supposed to be good places in New York. I've only attended one comedy club in New York for one show. I've spoken with you about that. I saw David Fry, but I don't recall the name of the club. But anyway, but I've heard that I presume there are other good venues, but as far as I know, the world famous comedy store, the comedy store, is the greatest comedy club in the history of the world, as far as I know. I mean, I know, the ancient Greeks 2,000 years ago, they were playing Lysistrata or whatever, and trying. I don't. I'm not saying it's the only club that's been a great comedy club, but as far as I know, the comedy store is the greatest comedy club in the history of the world.
Bravo, bravo. Robert William Abrevaya.
May I ask, do you have an opinion about that?
Well, it is hard to describe the 50 years of the Comedy Store and its importance. It is my understanding that back in at least the 60s and 70s, there was a strict dress code and a very strict, like it was the same as comedy on TV. But Mitzi, from what I hear, opened it up to let comedians have more of a personality and be more unique and not be strapped in an Argyle sweater or a suit and a tie. So I think from what I hear of the vision, Mitzi's vision of the Comedy Store and her execution of it, that it is absolutely unique and the best place on earth.
Best place on earth, yeah. I'm not the might be Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, something like that. I'm not positive about this, and I have a recollection of going to it. Maybe when I was like 2, 3, 4 years, I have a vague recollection. It's one of my earliest memories, and I'm pretty sure I saw elephants, and it was fascinating to me and probably good for my development. But my understanding is that starting a few years ago, they no longer have elephants in captivity, even if they're treated humanely. They don't like. It's not good for them to be locked up. So, as far as I know, they don't still have elephants in the greatest show on earth. That was what that was my association. I was like, yeah, yeah. Oh, that was good. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Robert. Robert William Abrevaya, did you witness or were you part of the strike?
No, I was. It's something that I only learned about uh, afterwards and or at a distance. It's not something that I have a personal, precise recollection of. I don't recall seeing comedians out in the street or lighting or whatever they were, or Love Mangello's tank or anything. I read about it. I've heard about it, but it's not something I have a direct experience of.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert. Did you witness or, oh, here, let me start over. Robert William Abrevaya, how were Letterman and Leno before their success, quote unquote, question
I
mark?
I saw Dave perform at the Tonight Show, I'm sorry, at the Comedy Store at least once, I think more than once, and I have a specific recollection. There was this couple that were seated in the front row or the front row no, or the front row just to the right, and Dave was really having his way with the woman. I don't know if he was a wife or girlfriend, or may have been. My impression is he was a convenient plant, like a member of the same fraternity or something like that. But Dave was having his way with in a humorous way. I mean, he was funny. As long as they're willing to play along, he can make as many crass remarks to her about her as it was. And there weren't that many people in the room, but and that was his crowd work. If there was a lot of other crowd work, I don't recall it, but it appeared that he this couple were a convenient plant, and he was doing I thought he was doing well. I thought he was doing a good job. At least that one. That's my own specific recollection of him performing there. But I have at least that one. I recall seeing Lemongello at the Comedy Store, and he had like a large motorcycle, but I only saw him perform. I never saw him perform at the Comedy Store. I did see him perform at the place on Melrose. I think at least twice, and so he was performing. But I never didn't see him perform at the Comedy Store.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert. Robert William Abrevaya, do you know a comedian named Brian Holtzman?
Consistent with the hostility of recent years, he pursued me with a loud voice more than once, at least arguable assault. But I was able to avoid direct contact with him. Besides the volume batteries, he didn't actually, and I was able to. I mean, it was harassing on at least two or three occasions, maybe three or four. I don't think it was more than five or six, but I was able to, for the most part, to avoid him. Sometimes I'm walking around, I'm looking for some a friendly face, and he's raising his voice. I like you say, I'm just trying to get away. I would, but note I was avoid. It was only volume batteries and assault, but
Robert, can you try to tilt your camera down just a little bit? Less sky, more you.
is that okay?
Wonderful, much better. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your constructive criticism, Mary Jane. I know you're more knowledgeable about these matters than I am, and I appreciate all of your help.
Thank you. Robert William Abrevaya, in my research, there was a blonde waitress that spoke very fondly of you. Can you tell us about Anna?
Oh, the lovely Anna. Speaking candidly, I always try to speak truthfully. I found Anna very attractive. I presume she still is very attractive, and it was. I had. Well, I'm glad at least to have known her for a period of time. And there's a really nice picture I'm thinking of. I hope I hope I still have it. Where she and this is around 97 or 98. Lauren, Lauren, Lauren. I think her first name is Lauren. I'm not Pelter or something. I'm not sure. I can picture her, but anyway. So the lovely Anna and this other waitress were with me on stage, and they took Polaroids or whatever it was, and then they gave me a copy, and it's very one of my favorite mementos of the Comedy Store. Yeah, that brings back pleasant memories. If you speak with her, please tell her I say hi.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert. Robert William Abrevaya. What would you say about, did you ever meet Carl LeBeau? The late Carl LeBeau.
I had the LAPD did a thing to me, one knee in the back, one handcuff on at the park in LA earlier. This was 90 or 91. And I ended up reporting it and speaking with a guy named Beck, who would later be Charlie Beck, who would later be the LAPD chief. At the time, he was like a lieutenant or a captain in the Rampart division. So that was the name of the guy I spoke with, who and registered a complaint with. And later that night, the entity that you just mentioned uh, 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 took the microphone out of my hands, said, "I could have you killed for $200," and uh, it sounds theoretically possible. I don't know, but yeah, it seemed not a coincidence that the LAPD and that entity in within hours of each other, and and I think he and his co-conspirator were part of and or among the leaders of a conspiracy or more than one conspiracy to violate my constitutional rights and or cover up conspiracy or more than one conspiracy to violate my constitutional rights. And there was it may have been turned over to or assumed by Nazi skinhead one, but at the time I was concerned about them, and I don't know this for 100% fact, but my information and understanding is that there's a bullet hole in the Comedy Store round thing out there in the parking lot, and that it's attributable to the entity that you mentioned, his co-conspirator. I don't know that for 100% fact, but that's my information. It got there somehow. That's my information understanding. I don't know that for a fact, but that's my information.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert. Robert William Abrevaya, do you have any memories of Sam Kennison, the late Sam Kennison?
Well, that was the that was the entity's co-conspirator that I was just referring to, that who supposedly is the source of that bullet hole. Uh, in fairness, I might say, initially this individual that you just named was friendly toward me. On at least one occasion, he shared some herb with me. This was at the Westwood Comedy Store, across the street from the Westwood Comedy Store. But he was one of the relatively few that did that. And initially he was friendly toward me, but but that's no. There was I was the closing act on potluck nights in the OR, and the entity you just mentioned would be in the main room, and on three separate occasions in a period of about 4 to 8 weeks. So it wasn't every single, but in approximately 4 to 8 weeks, on three separate occasions, he threw he threw a chair while I'm trying to do my act. And Nazi Skinhead one and his co-conspirators would surpass that even in one night on many occasions. But when it first happened to me, uh, it was it caused me concern.
I'm so sorry, Robert, to bring up such unpleasantries.
Well, no, I'm glad. No, I'm glad you. In a way, I'm glad you asked, because I'd like to have that on the record, because he was a part of a conspiracy or more than one conspiracy to violate my constitutional rights and or cover up a conspiracy or more than one conspiracy to violate the constitutional rights. And those were the first three chairs that were ever thrown in my direction, and I'd like to have that on the record. For whatever reason or combination of reasons, you know, I could I could I could speculate about that. I've been working for the relegalization of marijuana in a formal way since at least 1975, when I worked on Normal versus Davis National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws versus then Los Angeles Police Chief Ed Davis to prevent enforcement of the marijuana laws in Los Angeles. And this entity, and there may be a different psychoactive substance, but it may have had there may have been some connection to his hostility. In any case, that's speculation on my part, but I can
Are
speak for.
are you talking about cocaine? I think that's public knowledge.
Yeah, well, again, it's one of those things where I don't know it for 100% fact. Is that I could say, yeah, I saw this with my own eyes, but that's my information understanding. Again, I don't know that for 100%.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert William Abrevaya. Robert William Abrevaya, do you know of or did you ever meet Jackson Pardue?
Oh, I did. He was never a close friend, but he was someone who would say hi and occasionally communicate with, at least briefly. And uh, 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 and I had sort of lost track of him. But then maybe a year or two ago, I don't recall exactly, they started up a new Facebook group, Mitzi's Comedy Store alums or something like that. And I think he's one of the administrators. And I'd like to thank Jackson. No, thank you for asking. That reminds me, I on either on that web, I think it was on that website that he gave me this brief review, and then all caps, amazing. He put in all, I've been considering adding his good review to my advertising, and yeah, oh, yeah. So that was pleasant. Yeah, so he's one of the administrators, and I didn't know him well, but he was someone who was friendly on more than one occasion. Even at least on the level of hi, how you doing, and possibly a brief conversation.
Wonderful.
Uh,
Thank
but
you,
but since
Robert.
but
Oh,
No,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. We're Facebook friends, and also we're also on the same site. There's also another there's another comedy store site, but and I'm pleased to be part of it. But they actually misspelled the alums, but unless it was intentionally misspelled. But but there are at least two comedy store sites that I don't know if Jackson is part of that one, but he might be.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert William Abrevaya. Robert William Abrevaya, you worked for the Funny Farm. Who owned that, and how did it become the Comedy Store technically? Question
Okay,
mark.
now I don't claim to have a definitive in knowledge of this, but my information understanding is that Mitzi sold the place for tax purposes. Art Laveau was I may have some details of this, so I'm telling you, some details of this may be off, but I'm to the best of my something along these lines. Art Laveau had Art Laveau's club, and it was like a '50s dance club, and he and then that was in the main room, and Missy had the comedy. Anyway, somewhere I think it was 1979. Art Laveau bought the property from Mitzi, and then they opened the Funny Farm in about November or December of of 70 of that year of 70, yeah, of 70 oh, I'm sorry. They Yeah, I worked at from about I worked at the Funny Farm from December of '76 through February '77, to the best of my recollection. So I that would mean Mitzi sold the place, I think in '76, and then purchased it back in '78 or '79. I could be slightly off on that, but I think it's something like that. My what I was told, it was advantageous to her, tax wise.
Wonderful. So was it still called the Comedy Store? Any part of the multiple buildings
No,
during?
no, and the Funny Farm was just the original room. In fact, I was working as a doorman, and the first night I was the doorman at Art Laveau's club, which was a '50s and '60s dance club. They would play good music from the time, and it was fun. And I was there the first two or maybe three shows, and then they moved me next door to what's now called the original room, which was the Funny Farm. The Funny Farm wasn't the whole building. The Funny Farm was just the original room. They would share the same bar, and then the same owner. But the funny. Well, I don't know all that detail, but the Funny Farm was just the original room, and Art Laveau's club was next door. And I worked at Art Laveau's club at least the first show, or maybe the first two or three. But then they moved me to the comedy club, to the Funny Farm, and I stayed there thereafter, and made my stand-up comedy debut in January.
Bravo, bravo. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you, thank you. Robert William Abrevaya, there is a famous story about Pauly Shore offering you nachos. Could you tell us about that?
I, you know, I don't know about the child labor laws. She is her son, but I think Paulie may have been only 16 or 17, and and he was she was working in the kitchen of the Westwood Comedy Store, and he very nicely offered me. I think it was nachos. It might have been. I think it was nachos, and they look like it would probably taste good, but I don't like eating before I go on stage. So I said thank you, but no thank you. But that was the first time that we met. He was working. I don't. Maybe he also went on stage. I don't know that detail, but he was working behind the counter or in the kitchen, and preparing nachos and maybe as a waiter also.
Bravo, thank you, Robert. Robert William Abrevaya. There's Scott Shore, Peter Shore, Pauly Shore, Sandy Shore. Who is your favorite Shore offspring?
You know, I don't. I know. Thank you for stating the names of the individuals. I am aware of Paulie's brothers and sister, but oh, I'm glad you would ask me about that. I was trying to search my memory. I think I may have met Paulie's two brothers one time, and I was trying to. I don't have a very precise recollection of it, but what I think it was, there was something in the main room. It may have been. I don't know if I should say his name out loud, but the individual who was the talent coordinator at the time, and who subsequently had a legal situation with the comedy store. But I'm trying. I was trying to search my recollection. The best I can recall is that he may. It was either he introduced us from. He indicated that Paulie's two brothers were working a camera in the main room, 20, 30 feet away. Either he briefly introduced us. We didn't have any kind of extended conversation or extended conversation that I can recall, or uh, may have possibly have briefly introduced us, or at least at that distance of 20 or 30 feet, he says these that's who these two individuals are, and so I at least saw them at a distance. I don't have a precise recollection of it, but after we spoke, I was trying to. I searched the memory banks. I have a good memory, but not a perfect memory. I think I may have met them, or if not met them, at least perceived them once, and possibly met them, but I don't have a precise recollection of it. And if again, and I may have met one or both of them at some other time and just not known. I don't have a precise visual for them individually. And as to Sandy, I'm again, and I'm aware of her, but and maybe I have met her once or more than once, but I don't. Again, I don't have a precise visual or a precise recollection of meeting her individually. I may have met her once or more than once, but I don't have a precise recollection of it.
So would it be safe to say that Pauly Shore would be your favorite of Mitzi's offspring?
Um, you said that Peter and what's the other gentleman's name?
Scott, Peter, Pauly, and Sandy.
As far as I know, Peter and Scott
Yes.
and Sandy. Uh, as far as I know, never did anything negative toward me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert William Abrevaya. Did you ever meet Sammy Shore? Do you have any stories or thoughts?
I don't. If I ever did meet him, it's not something that I specifically recall. I don't have his. I've seen pictures of him and I've read about him. I'm aware of his role, but I don't have a specific recollection of ever having actually met him.
Thank you, Robert. Robert William Abrevaya. Would your camera tilt down a little bit more when you're done with that?
I'm sorry, say again, please.
The sky is so bright. Can you tilt the camera a little bit more on you? Beautiful.
Is that better?
Wonderful. Thank you. Ready for the question, Robert?
Yes, please.
Robert William Abrevaya. In the fall of 1985, a known nemesis of yours arrived at the Comedy Store. Did you ever get along with them? Question mark. How did you become nemesis? Question mark.
I'm going to guess I know who you're referring to, but I'm not 100% positive. You're referring to Nazi Skinhead one?
I believe so. What is their name?
If someone would want to do a play on words, someone might refer to this entity as Naked Rectum. It's also something I've seen him do on stage, and it's not a pleasant memory.
I'm not sure. Well, Robert, we don't need to go into any unpleasantries. Did you have a story about being friends with them or becoming nemesis? Why?
You're referring to the Naked Rectum? Nazi Skinhead one? You know
possibly, yes.
And the specific question is again, please?
In the fall of 1985, did you ever get along with them, and or how did you become nemesis?
Well, at a certain point, he just started being consistently hostile toward me. But one of my first memories of him is him having a golf club and whacking the comedies at the back stairs of the back of the stairs at the back of the OR, whacking at the guardrail or something like that with a golf club. It's that might be my first conscious memory of him. But at a certain point, he just it kept targeting me, and then stole the button after chasing me up the belly room stairs. Stole the button off my green jacket, and claimed he gave it to Lemon Jello, and he's at the Comedy Store. I don't know who the big cheese is, but at the Comedy Store, he was the on-site leader of the Nazi Lemon Jello Nazi Skinhead one conspiracy.
Robert, can you tilt the camera back down again when you're ready?
Oh. Is that better?
Yes, wonderful. Robert William Abrevaya, what was your favorite period of performance at the Comedy Store? The 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, etc. Question mark.
I'm oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm literally tying my boots here. Please, would you restate your question, please?
Sure, I'll wait till you're done, and then if you could tilt the camera back down because the sky's just so bright.
Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, Robert. Robert William Abrevaya, what was your favorite period of performance at the Comedy Store? The 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, etc. Question mark.
Well, I always thought that the positives outweighed the negatives, but once my physical safety started to be an issue, every time I was on the premises, and often, as you also know, when I'm off the premises, but in the area, that it was I no longer. It was not something that was an undiluted pleasure for me. It was something that was a net positive, but I always felt that I had to be concerned. So, in terms of physical safety, I like the time prior to uh, 84 or 85, whenever the chair throwing began. I don't recall precisely, but it's the only earliest specific recollection that, or one of the earliest specific recollections I have. But uh, in terms of the opportunity to perform, I've I the positive aspect of it, I continue to enjoy, despite the negatives.
Bravo, bravo, Robert William Abrevaya. What was the craziest thing you ever witnessed at the world famous Comedy Store?
The fact that they would allow me to physically attack me with lasers in the eye, with multiple lasers, more than one laser in the eye, and while I'm trying to perform, and hit me with thrown objects, and hit try to disintegrate my nervous system with high volume, and at from the electronic sound system, and other attempted gradual assassination. I it hadn't occurred to me that that kind of thing would be allowed, but that's I that's off the top of my head. I'd say the viciousness of the attempted assassination, attempted gradual assassination, is the craziest. If you want to say craziest, most evil. Is it evil and or crazy? At some point. So evil and or crazy, evil, crazy, or both. That's it.
Thank you, Robert. Robert William Abrevaya. Would you describe your relationship with Eleanor Kerrigan? I heard that you were married once a while ago, a long time ago.
Wow. I, I find many women attractive, but among the women I actually know, she's one of relatively few I've actually thought, wow, if I had the opportunity, if things we're right. I've thought about the subject, but we've never been married.
Oh no?
She says innocently. I did enjoy doing some Eleanor Kerrigan material on the 19th edition of the Robert William Abrevaya show, and I hope you'll all tune in. It's on Vimeo and YouTube.
Under Robert William Abrevaya. Thank you. Robert
Thank
William
you.
Abrevaya. What was your relationship with Mitzi Shore?
Well, I was, as we were saying before, I think of, as far as I know, the Comedy Store is the greatest comedy club in the history of the world. Mitzi allowed me to perform there. I was reflecting on the numbers recently, more than 2,000 times. Without an exhaustive accounting, I was the closing act most potluck nights since at least 1983. Prior to that, I was the closing act most potluck nights at the Westwood Comedy Store for the period of time leading up to the time it closed in 1983. And there's that show that began in 2000 that you and I were both part of for a number of years, and I know you still have some artistic control over or responsibility for that show, and that was many more performances. And for a while there, I was performing 4 nights, 4 shows at 3 nights a week. They actually had comedy store. Comedy store was always or almost always until the COVID was at least one night a week. But some years it was 2 nights a week, and for a time in the 2000 2005 period, it was 3 times a week. So I was doing 4 shows in 3 nights. So um, and once again, your original question was.
Oh, it was Robert William Abrevaya. What was your relationship with Mitzi Shore?
Oh, so she's given me an opportunity to perform at the Comedy Store more than 2,000 times. Mary Jane, I can't see your picture. Am I doing something wrong, or is there?
Oh, no,
Oh, there you are.
I'm back. You're correct.
Yes. Oh, no, no, no. There you are.
Thank you.
Yeah. So she gave me the opportunity to perform at the greatest comedy club in the world.
Bravo, bravo. Robert William Abrevaya. I'll wait till you're done. Robert William Abrevaya, do you have any fond memories of being part of the Ding Dong Show? ?
I like meeting the lovely Mary Jane as an individual, and well, I would hope to have met you anyway, but my recollection is that's where I met you first. So at least that's my early association.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, thank you. Robert William Abrevaya, what was your best memory in the last 50 years of the world famous Comedy Store?
Wow. The 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 one that I thought of first in December 1983. That's a good question. I'd like to be able to think about it and answer it. But the one that I thought of first, in December of 1983, there was a waitress at the Comedy Store. I could be wrong. The name I'm recalling that I want to say is Jill. I'm not recalling. She was maybe she was tall, maybe 5'10", 5'11", blonde or blondish hair, fair skin, blue eyes. To the best of my recollection, I could be wrong about it. But anyway, one of the waitresses at the Comedy Store in December mentioned to me that I had been on Showtime's The Funniest Person in America. And that's the first I'd been on television before as president of the Lakeland High School General Organization, as president of the Student Council in Shrub Oak, New York. I was on TV on WPIX, but as a comedian, this was the first time I was ever on television, and Wayne and Jeff Wayne was on it again, and the guy with the 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 beer holster. I used to wear a beer holster. I'm not thinking anyway. Anyway, there were three comedy store associated. I think Jeff played at the comedy store some, and anyway, in the funniest person in America, and Randy Gunderson, I think, was the sound guy, was the audiovisual guy, and I got to perceive myself on Showtime's the funniest person in America in the audiovisual room of the Comedy Store in December '83, and learning about that and being able to perceive myself on the funniest person in America, that's a very pleasant memory.
Bravo, bravo. Well, Robert William Abrevaya, we both were able to let me start over. Robert William Abrevaya, we both were able to attend the private gallery of the 50th anniversary of the world famous Comedy Store on April 7th, 2022. Do you remember any highlights from that evening? Who was the band that played?
I don't recall the band they played, but
Buddy
they
Rich?
played.
Who's Buddy Rich?
Buddy Rich was a drummer. He was one of the best. I think he was on the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. He may have been a personal friend of Mr. Carson's, but he was a really good drummer at one time.
His daughter was there, and that was the band in the main room.
Yeah, they played a jazz tune. I actually liked the tune. Apparently, it was Mitzi's favorite. But I can't, even if I like the sound, I can't take the volume, so I had to leave the room.
What was the name of that Mitzi's favorite song? Something Birdie?
Only guess. Was it possibly Birdland? I don't know. I'm not positive. That's a question mark. I'm not positive about that. That's my guess off the top of my head, but I'm not positive that's accurate.
I would guess that's possibly accurate because I remember Bird being in the title, but I just couldn't remember the rest.
Okay,
of
then it might be Birdland. Okay, I didn't want to get. I wasn't sure, so I'd rather say I'm not sure than get it wrong.
And rumor had it that was the song that you would listen to if you were on hold for the Comedy Store.
Sounds possible. I don't know if it was uniform over all the years, but it may have been at one time or often. I don't know. I don't recall exactly.
Robert William Abrevaya, who were you most excited for seeing at your return to the world famous Comedy Store, April 7th, 2022, and/or who were some of the people you had fun mingling with?
Well, I have to say it was really nice to see Eleanor Kerrigan. Fondness makes the heart grow fonder. I really missed her, and it was nice to at least hug and say hi and have some brief communications. Would like to spend more time with her. It was really good to see Eleanor, and I hope to see more of her again. Now, am I allowed to include the hostess in this response?
Sure.
It was nice to see the lovely Mary Jane. I was fortunately I hadn't been a full more than 2 years since I'd seen Mary Jane, but it had been a number of months at least. So it was nice to see you too.
Thank you. Did you recognize any people from the past or famous stars?
I don't know about famous stars. It was nice. I saw. You remember Brad Watson on piano? Brad Watson, the piano player. Yeah, he and Dana Ziegler, if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, they're moving to Tennessee, and New York. I mean Nashville or the Nashville area. I don't know exactly the detail, but Nashville is in New York or California, but it's a big music town in and of itself. So maybe it'll be a better fit for his musical talents. I wish them the best. I don't know. It was good to see Brad Watson in person, and I had met Dana at the 50th at the missing memorial, and I had a positive impression of her individually and of her relationship with Brad, and it's been positively reinforced since then. So I'm sorry to see them go. I'm sorry to leave that they're leaving the area, but I wish them the best, and I hope everything works out for the best.
Thank you, Robert. Robert, William Abrevaya, is it true that you tripped Dean the Nightmare Gilbert at the 50th anniversary party? I saw that he filled out one of the complaint cards and was so incompetent he couldn't get it into the manager's slot for complaints. Is this true or false?
Is this a serious question? This is the first I'm hearing of it.
So you did not trip, you did not physically assault Dean the Nightmare Gilbert?
No.
Wonderful. Did he assault you?
I did not. I remember I had just greeted Eleanor, and then barely had greeted Rick. Rick Ingram was there, and then I think the Nightmare's mother and her male associate, both of whom have quote Will Smith me unquote. They have not on the face, thank goodness, but they've both hit me. Both of the Nazis have hit me. Nightmare may have been with them. I did go up the belly room stairs quickly enough to avoid physical contact, but he may have been in that bee's nest of hostility. I don't know. I saw one or more. I think, and I just got out of there as quickly as possible. I had just said Eleanor. I just introduced. There's Rick, and I had just said hi to Rick, and then I saw one or more of them. He may have been in that group. I don't know. But I got out the stairs and I was able to avoid physical contact. But they both Will Smith me and Nightmare attacked me with vibrational batteries, kicked me, physical batteries, etc. As well. He's one of I was able to avoid physical contact though.
Wonderful. Robert, William Abrevaya, in celebration of the world famous Comedy Store 50th anniversary, would you like to help me name the 50 most influential comedians in your opinion, starting now? Number 1.
What's the wording of the question, please? One more time.
Robert, William Abrevaya, would you like to make a list of the 50 most influential comedians in the last 50 years at the world famous Comedy Store? Number 1.
It sounds like a lot of work.
Well, just start naming people that you recognize from the Comedy Store, starting in the beginning.
The one that I would put at the top of the list currently is Argus Hamilton. I mentioned Argus earlier. He's an institution. Don't want to be careless about how you use the word legend, but you could even use the word legend. He's one of the all-time great comedians, and his continued presence at the Comedy Store has been, in my opinion, a good influence and continues to be.
Wonderful. Number 2.
Is it influential? Was that the how do you phrasing the question?
Yes, the 50 most influential could be to you, could be to society, comedians that have passed through the doors of the world famous Comedy Store in the last 50 years.
I don't feel like going through that. If you have a question about a specific individual, I'll try to be responsive.
Okay. Let's see. Robin Williams, you mentioned.
I think when he was with, I think he was The best I ever saw perform at the Comedy Store.
George Carlin.
With respect to Argus, there, with all respect to Argus Hamilton, I never saw George perform at the Comedy Store, but I did see him at the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson at least once, and I think at least 2 or 3 times. I think George was obviously one of the all-time greats. His that First Amendment, the 7 dirty words, quote unquote. The First Amendment is important, and George Carlin is part of that.
Wonderful.
I think it was WBAI in New York, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, let me see.
We've done more than an hour at this point, haven't we?
Yes. I just wanted to get a good montage of names. Red Fox.
I saw Red Fox perform once live. I was working for the California Democratic Party in 1981. Reagan had just been elected, and there was not a lot of enthusiasm for Democratic fundraisers. So they had me, going door to door and trying to raise funds. And initially, that first night, I think with the cooperation of a known donor, I was able to get a donation, and then so I at the end, when I actually received a check from the Democratic Party. I had made like $10 for the whole summer, but I did get the check anyway. Uh, uh, I lost the question. Please start again.
Oh, we're just listing comedians. I think we're.
Red Fox. Yeah, yeah. So there was a fundraiser on I don't recall the exact location, but I saw Red Fox perform live, and he mentioned that the way that he was able to avoid service during World War II or Korea was that he used some of this powdery white stuff that made your heart beat real fast, and somehow that helped him to they thought he was able to appear to have a heart condition, or and beat the draft or something like that. He didn't have a reason to make that up. My impression, it was based on a true story, or based on a true story. That's my recollection of it. But I did see him perform. That's my conscious recollection of that performance.
Jonathan Winters.
I saw Jonathan Winters at the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, at least once, I think more than once, and I have a specific recollection. I would try to coordinate. I was wearing a green jacket. There was probably there may have been a green ticket given out that day, and naked, I was wearing a green jacket and a green tie, or a green and brown tie from Mr. Johnny Carson, one of Mr. Carson's sides. Anyway, and so I was wearing a green jacket, and they had two of the greatest comedians of all time, Mr. Johnny Carson and Jonathan Winters, and they were trying to get laughs, and the audience wasn't responding, and I always wanted to be a good audience, but I didn't want to laugh unless I thought something was funny, if you know what I mean. If I thought it, then I would laugh, and I would know how to laugh. But and then so finally, Jonathan makes a remark about Kermit. And I really, John is talking. I'm trying to help guys, and then something opened up after we mentioned Kermit, and they got a laugh, and things started rolling from there. But I have that recollection of Jonathan Winters. If things had worked out differently, I think Jonathan Winters and Robin Williams and Mr. Carson and myself could have been a good foursome comedically, but it didn't quite happen.
Wonderful. Richard Pryor.
I have some specific Richard Pryor recollections. I actually, I don't want to overstate them. But in a sense, I actually met him once. I was leaving the OR, or leaving, or possibly leaving the bathroom, but I think leaving the OR and going toward the main room. You know, there's that back corridor there where there's also now a men's room, and uh, uh, either I opened the door or he opened the door, and there, staring in my, 18 inches away is Richard Pryor, and uh, my, I'm still not 100% positive to this day, but there were no word exchange, but there was. Whoa, sorry about that. I was I was going for a visual with my hand, and I forgot that I.
Are you there? Hello? Hello, Robert? Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this. This was The Mary Jane Show special guest, Robert William Abravaya's tribute to 50 years of the world famous Comedy Store. Thank you, Comedy Store. Thank you, Robert. Thank you. Good night.